This is my GasGas 700 Supermoto. It is a 693cc single cylinder, big banging piece of pure unadulterated two-wheel fun. Oh, Jesus Christ. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about the time someone tried to steal it. And or possibly bum me. So, to set the scene, I bought this in early September of last year from a chap up north. And despite having never ridden a big monster single like this, I ran it in very quickly, got it registered onto Irish plates, and then I put it on a boat bound for northern Spain with a bunch of my mates for a week's touring of the Picos. And you might be sitting there thinking, that doesn't sound like a very smart idea. Taking a bike you're not used to or have never really ridden before, touring to northern Spain with no tools or backup, etc. But look, if that doesn't spark your sense of adventure, then I'm afraid we can't be friends. The crossing itself went pretty well. I was a little late getting down, so I was probably the last bike onto the boat, to be honest. But the crossing itself was smooth. And when we got off the boat, we went to the nearest petrol station, and that's when one of my mates spotted something on the GasGas. Keep in mind, in the few weeks I'd had the bike, I'd been through the fine-tooth comb, and I'd fully detailed it and prepped it to make sure it was going to be ready for a week tearing around the mountains of northern Spain. So when a mate of mine asked me, hey, is this some kind of modification or what's this about? I, of course, said, the fuck are you talking about? What he spotted was this. Very dirty, very well used needle nose pliers. And it had been cable tied shut onto a pipe coming out of my engine. So we're all stood there staring at this pliers, and I said, no, it's definitely not something I've done, and it wasn't there when I cleaned the bike at the weekend. I definitely didn't put this on. So we snipped the cable tie, took the pliers off, tossed it in my bag, and we hit the road because we needed to get to our hotel, and we decided we'll talk about it over a beer, which is exactly what we did. So, over a few beers that night, we discussed it. And actually one of the group is a ship's captain on large cargo vessels. And he explained, look, the car decks are sealed from the public, but the ferry staff will obviously go around and do inspections. Maybe there was a leak from your motorbike and they thought clamping that hose or that pipe would stop the fuel or whatever was leaking. And I thought that is entirely possible. Let's ask the ferry company. So that night, I sent the ferry company an email. I said, hey, I was traveling on this boat on this date for this sailing. I was parked on this deck. And yeah, when we got off the boat, we noticed a needle nose pliers had been attached to my bike. Was there an issue with my bike? Was it leaking fuel? Was there anything that would explain why this was put on my bike? Because it definitely wasn't there before. So I got an email back from them a couple of days later, which basically said, hey, thanks for reaching out. Due to the serious nature of this issue, we have escalated it to some higher team for investigation. They'll be in touch as soon as possible. So I was like, fair enough. I got on with my life. We were having a great time. I didn't let it weigh in my mind. We were there having the time of our lives.
That was fucking awesome.
So, I eventually heard back from the ferry company, and this is, whoa, Jesus, this is what they said. Dear Mr. Ted, thank you for your email and attachments received of yada yada. I was very sorry to read of the very strange and disturbing situation which happened to you and that you found that a needle nose pliers had been attached to a pipe of your engine. After sending your email to our loading officer for possible explanation, they have responded advising that they did not hear or receive any reports of such activity on board such and such ferry. Moreover, they could not find a damage report made on board. I regret to say that the footage on board are only in operation to monitor the garage at the time, but were no longer available to us to check at the time of your email. I am really sorry that we cannot help you any further, as we are at a loss to understand what has happened. Yours sincerely, such a person from the ferry company. And you think, all right, fair enough. Kind of just put it out of my mind for a while. And then a few weeks later, I remembered something. So all the guys who were on the trip with me, who came on the ferry from Ireland, had all gone down the night before and stayed near the port. I couldn't because I had work I couldn't get out of. So I had to get up at ungodly o'clock in the morning and ride down in the pitch black, freezing cold, half rain, to get to the ferry port in time. That's why I was one of the last bikes, probably actually the last bike getting on the boat, because I kind of skated in there at the very, very end. But on the way down, I had to take the M11 motorway. And it was so goddamn cold that even with the heated grips on, I was losing feelings in my fingers and I was losing the will to live, basically. So I stopped in a petrol station to fuel up and to get a cup of tea to try and warm me up. Boom, boom. Love that noise. So I pulled into this petrol station at like 4:30, 5 in the morning. And it was actually pretty goddamn busy for, a Tuesday. It was vans everywhere. It was all vans. And I figured, okay, that makes sense. Tradies going to work, lads getting on site, etc. People just living their lives. So I fueled up. And I went inside. I got a cup of tea, which took a few minutes because my fingers weren't fully working because it was so goddamn cold. And then I went outside. I shot a very quick message to camera, which I'll put here.
And stopped in Kilmacnog on the way down. I've actually not gone that far. I thought I needed fuel. I didn't. I definitely needed a cup of tea though. Fucking freezing. Whoa. On the way though. Adventure starts.
And then I got back on the road. This is the only time I stopped between my house and the ferry port. I rolled straight into the ferry port, right onto the boat, didn't stop anywhere else. So what I remembered, and by the way, this is all weeks later after I've got home and kind of half forgotten about it, was I remember thinking at the time that, yeah, there was a lot of tradies around and stuff, lads heading to work, but also a few lads who kind of looked a little bit ropey in the petrol station, but kind of thought nothing of it, mostly because I was too fucking cold at the time. But thinking back now, I think the most likely explanation is that while I was inside paying for my fuel, making that cup of tea very, very slowly, somebody ran up, crimped the pipe on my engine, which, if you know anything about motorbikes, you'd be forgiven for thinking, oh yeah, that's the fuel pipe or that's the air pipe or something that's going to cause the engine to stop running. But There's something very unique about the GasGas. And I'm not going to say it here just in case this dickhead tries this again. But I think what they tried to do was crimp a fuel pipe, let me leave the petrol station, engineer a breakdown a kilometre or two down the road. Because remember, there'll still be some fuel in the lines, so I could start the bike, get out the gap, get onto the motorway again, and then suddenly the bike would just stutter and die a couple of kilometres down the road. But they didn't crimp the right pipe. That's the only thing I can think of why somebody would do this. To try and engineer a breakdown, follow me out of the petrol station, wait for my bike to die on the side of a motorway, pull in, be all friendly going, "Oh, having trouble, lad, do you want a hand? We'll throw it in the back of the van." And then either take off up the road with my bike in the back of their van and me left stood there, or something else even more nefarious. I don't know. That's my thoughts on things. I can't think of anything else. And unfortunately, by the time I'd realised this, the petrol station involved, like, one, their CCTV had probably been overwritten, and two, they wouldn't have shared it with me anyway because GDPR. So I would have had to, I don't know, bring it to the guards, tell them this really kind of slightly convoluted story, and then ask them to spend their time and energy possibly tracking this down when, you know, nothing happened in the end. Still not happy there's dickheads out here trying this shit, but yeah. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Were they after the GasGas? Or do you think they were after me? Let me know in the comments. Bye!